By the time I realized my silver USB drive was gone, the office smelled like burnt espresso and panic, which felt fitting. My project sat on that drive like a crown jewel in a pawn shop window. 6 weeks of vendor analysis, pricing models, compliance notes, and a proposal that could have moved me from quiet workhorse to visible asset at Lucent Harbor Group. I had backed up pieces, but not the polished final version with my annotated notes, negotiation script, match and the margin strategy that had kept me awake through several early mornings. I checked my tote, my laptop sleeve, my desk drawer, even the little ceramic bowl where people abandoned paper clips and dignity. Nothing. Then I saw Kira, the new intern, sliding a silver drive into the pocket of her fitted blazer as she passed the printer station. I stepped into her path. She had perfect eyeliner and the sort of smile people mistake for innocence when they are allergic to evidence. Kira, that is my USB drive. She blinked. No, it is mine. I held out my hand. Mine has a blue dot near the cap. I marked it after someone borrowed one from my desk. She patted the pocket and gave me a tiny shrug. This one does not. That is because the dot is on the other side. Her smile got tighter. You are accusing me of stealing? I looked at her for a moment, calm as a judge with a headache. I am accusing you of possessing my property. In the theft part is still auditioning. A few heads lifted over cubicle walls, then dipped right back down. Corporate wildlife loves drama as long as it stays a safe distance away. Kira crossed her arms. You should be careful. That sentence, delivered by someone who had been employed for less time than yogurt stays fresh, told me plenty. I went straight to my manager, Ben. He was in his glass office pretending to read a budget memo while actually watching his reflection. I explained what I saw, on what was on the drive, and why I needed it back immediately. He leaned back like a man preparing to deliver wisdom instead of nonsense. Kira says the drive is hers, then asked to inspect it. She feels uncomfortable being singled out. I stared at him. I feel uncomfortable being robbed. Let us keep this professional, Liana. That snapped the picture into focus. Not the theft, the loyalty, the softness in his voice when he said her name, the protective phrasing, and the way he was more concerned with her comfort than company data sitting in the wrong pocket. I said, "Why are you protecting an intern over a lead analyst?" His jaw tightened. I am managing a conflict. No, I said. You are curating one. He stood. Enough. Kira is helping present on the Cressida bid now. Maybe you are stressed because you are overloaded. Helping present. My stomach dropped so fast it nearly filed a complaint. That bid was my project. He dismissed me with a look usually reserved for parking violations and women who knew too much. Outside his office, I caught Dina from payroll, Omar from procurement, and Liv from operations near the break area. I told them exactly what happened. Dina pressed her lips together. Omar looked at the ceiling. Liv gave me the office version of a funeral bouquet. They all raised their shoulders. That was it. No warning, no ally, no whispered map to justice. Just a synchronized shrug from people who had mortgages and blood pressure medicine and no appetite for martyrdom. I walked back to my desk and sat very still. People mistake stillness for surrender, in women especially. They see a quiet face and imagine collapse. They have never met a woman from my family after she has been lied to before lunch. I opened my notebook and wrote 3 things. Document everything. Protect the work. Make them explain it in writing. Then I looked through the glass wall and saw Kira laughing in Ben office while my project likely sat in her pocket like stolen jewelry. That was the moment I stopped trying to get my drive back with manners. That was the moment I started building a case. I was raised by women who treated paperwork like armor. My mother kept tax returns in labeled binders. My aunt read mortgage clauses for fun, and my grandmother believed a receipt could outlive a grudge. So, while Ben and Kira were busy playing office romance with my career, I opened a blank file and began laying bricks. I started with facts. Date. Early morning. My drive last seen beside my laptop after I printed the executive summary. Kira near my desk while I was pulled into an unscheduled call. My visual identification of the drive. Her denial. Ben refusal to inspect. Ben's statement that Kira was helping present on the Cressida bid. I wrote everything cleanly, without adjectives. Emotions are for diaries. Evidence is for people you plan to corner politely. Then I checked my sent mail, cloud drafts, and printer logs. I had not saved the final polished package anywhere accessible, but fragments existed everywhere because I was thorough and anxious, which in corporate life is just another word for employable. My pricing grid had been emailed to procurement for vendor verification. My risk matrix was attached to a compliance question sent to legal. My original assumptions were in a spreadsheet auto-synced to my laptop. Even better, the printer history showed my user ID and document name from the morning. It was enough to establish authorship. I sent Ben an email. I kept it cool enough to refrigerate seafood. Following our conversation, I am requesting immediate review of the USB drive currently in Kira possession because it may contain confidential work product and company data associated with the Cressida proposal. Please confirm whether information security or HR should be included to preserve chain of custody and prevent misuse of company materials. I knew two things about men like Ben. They fear witnesses, and they fear written records more. He replied faster than expected. No need to escalate. Kira has stated the device is personal. We will proceed with existing presentation assignments. Beautiful. Stupid, but beautiful. He had just refused a basic data security review in writing. I forwarded his reply to my private folder and took a slow breath. Next, I pulled the company handbook from the intranet. Conflict of interest, data handling, misappropriation of work product, non-retaliation, manager romantic relationships requiring disclosure. There it was, tucked beneath the usual wallpaper of corporate virtue. Supervisors had to disclose relationships that could affect reporting lines, project assignments, or personnel decisions. I almost laughed. Ben had not just mishandled my complaint, he had gift-wrapped it for audit. Around midday, I went to legal operations under the innocent pretense of clarifying a citation in our vendor agreement. Nita, who ran that department with a velvet voice and a machete brain, listened while I asked general questions. If someone uses another employee work product without attribution, I said, what becomes relevant? Depends, she said. Authorship records, access trails, manager conduct, MEF1 and whether confidential data was mishandled. And if a supervisor had an undisclosed relationship with the person benefiting? Nita looked up slowly. Then the company problem gets expensive. I thanked her and left before my face revealed how satisfied I felt. By the afternoon, an invitation hit calendars for a pre-board review on the Cressida bid. Presenter, Kira Ames. Supporting manager, Ben Corwin. I was not invited. That was insulting, but useful. I still had pieces of my work. And one thing about original thinkers is that they leave fingerprints everywhere. My margin strategy used an unusual escalation model I built after reviewing 3 years of vendor drift. The talking points included a phrase I wrote in a moment of dark humor: profit without fantasy. Nobody in that office talked like that but me. I spent the next hour rebuilding enough of the deck to prove origin. Then I created a comparison file: my drafts, my timestamps, my printer logs, my cost assumptions, my notes from meetings, my email to Ben, his reply. People think revenge is fireworks. It is not. Sometimes revenge is a folder named Supporting Documentation. By the time the office started thinning out, I had one more move left for the day. I sent a short note to HR. compliance, and information security requesting urgent guidance on possible unauthorized possession of company data and possible conflict of interest affecting project integrity. I attached nothing yet. I wanted them curious before I made them alarmed. Then I packed my bag, left my desk spotless, and walked past Ben's office. Kira was inside, beaming at a slide on the screen. She looked up like she had already won. I smiled back because women like her never recognize the expression of someone who has stopped arguing and started calculating. The next morning, the office had the thin, electrical feel of a room before a storm, and you could sense it in the way people typed harder than necessary and laughed too sharply at weak jokes. My meeting request from HR landed just after I sat down. Compliance and information security were copied. So was Ben. Good. If a snake is going to watch you light the field, it should at least get a front row seat. I entered the conference room with my laptop, my notebook, and the posture of a woman who had spent the night turning outrage into bulletproof sequencing. Across the table sat Marin from HR, Theo from compliance, and a tight-faced analyst from information security named Joel. Ben arrived with Kira 2 minutes later, wearing the expression of a man still convinced charm counted as governance. Marin began. Liana, you reported possible unauthorized possession of company data and a potential conflict of interest. Please walk us through your concerns. I did. Calmly, chronologically. No embroidery, no trembling, no speeches about betrayal. I described the missing drive, what it contained. Kira possession, her denial, Ben refusal to inspect, and his written instruction not to escalate. Then I handed over the comparison file. Joel reviewed the printer logs. Theo read the emails. Marin went still when she reached the policy excerpt on supervisory relationships. Ben cleared his throat. This is being dramatized. Kira has her own materials. She was selected to present because Liana was behind schedule. I turned my laptop so everyone could see my timeline. The final proposal draft was printed from my credentials before the drive disappeared. The pricing grid includes an escalation formula I built and circulated in pieces to procurement and legal. The deck Kira is scheduled to present includes my terminology and structure. If she developed that independently, it is a remarkable case of synchronized authorship. Kira rolled her eyes. Ideas overlap. I nodded. That is true. Theft does too. Joel asked the sensible question. Do we have the USB drive? Ben spoke before Kira could. This has become invasive. Theo looked at him the way accountants look at creative expense reports. If a removable device may contain company data, examination is not invasive, it is required. Kira shifted in her chair. Her confidence cracked just enough for me to see daylight. Joel requested the drive. She hesitated, then placed it on the table. Silver. Blue dot near the cap. Mine. The room got very quiet. Joel took it for review. Marin folded her hands. Ben, is there anything you would like to disclose regarding your relationship with Ms. Ames? Ben actually tried indignation. My personal life is irrelevant. Theo answered before I could. Policy says otherwise. There it was. And the beautiful little Death of Arrogance by Handbook. Ben admitted they were involved. He tried to soften it by calling it recent, casual, unrelated to work. He said he had intended to disclose it. People always intend to do the honorable thing right after they are caught doing the opposite. Then the part I enjoyed arrived. Joel returned after a short interval with enough confirmation to turn the air metallic. The drive contained multiple versions of the Cressida proposal, each including my labeled files, my working notes, and a draft folder copied from my laptop export structure. Kira had even opened a document titled Presentation Cues, which included the exact sequence I used to answer pricing objections. Marin closed her folder. Kira, why were these files on a device you claimed was personal? Kira looked at Ben. Ben looked at the table. The table, tragically, declined to save them. She said, "I borrowed it." I almost admired the nerve. "With permission?" Theo asked. No answer. I spoke then, evenly. This was not a misunderstanding. It was conversion of work product, mishandling of company data, and misrepresentation in a live project process. It also exposed the company to bid integrity concerns if Cressida asks for authorship support or process controls. That landed, not because it was moral, but because it was expensive. Corporations may not love justice, but they do respect liability. The meeting ended with Kira placed on immediate suspension pending investigation, Ben removed from decision-making on the account, and the Cressida review halted. Marin asked me to remain available for follow-up. Theo asked for my reconstructed files. Joel kept the drive. When I stepped back onto the floor, heads popped up all over the department. News travels faster than ethics. Dina caught my eye near payroll and mouthed, "What happened?" I gave her the smallest smile. "Policy happened," I said. And for the first time all week, the shrugging stopped. Once the investigation started, the office became very interested in principles it had ignored 48 hours earlier. People who had perfected the art of neutral shoulders suddenly remembered policy language, prior incidents, and suspicious little moments they had not considered worth mentioning when I was the only one carrying the risk. It was almost sweet. Ben was placed on leave by the next day. Kira badge access was cut. The Cressida account moved under temporary executive review, and because nobody wanted the proposal delayed, they assigned me to salvage it. I accepted with the serene face of a saint and the private satisfaction of a woman watching the universe discover documentation. I did not waste the opportunity. I rebuilt the deck from source files on company systems, tightened the pricing case, and added a governance slide on vendor oversight that made our chief financial officer nod so hard I thought his glasses might resign. I also cleaned the narrative. One thing theft had given me was distance. I could now see where my original work had been too dense, too eager to prove every point. Betrayal edits wonderfully. Before the executive review, Marin asked if I would join a follow-up meeting to clarify impact on my role and career path. That is HR language for please do not sue us while we figure out how embarrassed we are. I arrived prepared. I want 3 things, I said. Formal correction of authorship on the Cressida project, written assurance against retaliation, and a review of management controls when personal relationships create assignment bias. Marin nodded carefully. That is reasonable. It is cheaper than unreasonable, I said. She almost smiled. And I also asked for something many employees forget they can request, a written summary of the complaint outcome as it related to my reporting structure and project status. Not every company provides every detail, but asking matters. It signals that you understand process and expect a record. People are less likely to get slippery when they know you collect paper trails the way some women collect silk scarves. The executive review went better than even I expected. I presented the proposal, what answered objections, and walked them through why our negotiation posture would protect margin without triggering vendor flight. When one executive challenged the contingency reserve, I explained the downside exposure in plain numbers, then noted that weak contracting habits often cost more than hard bargaining ever does. Around the room, pens moved, heads dipped, interest sharpened. Afterward, the chief operating officer, Soren Pike, stopped me in the corridor. "You built this?" "Yes." "Alone?" "Mostly, though I did have assistance from Betrayal and Caffeine." He laughed. "Submit your final board package directly to my office." There are moments when a career turns not with applause, but with routing instructions. Meanwhile, the gossip machine offered dessert. Ben had apparently told several people Kira was brilliant and underappreciated. The investigation found she had not only taken my drive, but also accessed drafts from a shared project folder beyond her assignment scope. Worse for Ben, Messages between them showed he knew she was presenting my work before he told me I was overloaded. In corporate language, that moves from favoritism into active misconduct wearing a blazer. The quiet coworkers finally found their voices. Omar apologized near the elevators. Liv sent me an article on retaliation protections with a note that said, "You were right to go formal." Dina brought me tea and whispered, "I should have said something sooner." I believed her. Fear makes cowards of decent people every day before lunch. Still, fear is expensive when it rents space in your spine. That evening, I called my mother on my walk home and told her the broad version. She listened, then said, "So you did not scream?" "No." "Good. Silence with records is louder." I smiled all the way to the corner. By the end of the week, I had my authorship restored, my project back, and an invitation to present at the board session. Ben and Kira were still under review, but I already knew how this would end. Not because justice always wins, because bad liars hate documents, and I had given their lies a filing cabinet. The board session felt less like a meeting and more like a stage where polished shoes came to admire risk from a safe distance. I wore a navy suit, small gold hoops, and the expression my cousins call my tax audit face. The Cressida package sat in front of every director with my name on the cover where it belonged. When I began speaking, the room settled quickly. Numbers do that when delivered without apology. I walked them through supplier concentration risk, pricing leverage, compliance exposure, and the contract terms we needed before signing anything with a smiling logo and slippery indemnity language. I explained why ownership of work product matters inside a company, not just for ego, but for accountability. If nobody knows who built the assumptions, nobody knows who can defend them when the market tilts. That is how bad deals grow legs. A few directors asked sharp questions. I like them for that. One woman on the audit committee, Celia Voss, asked what process weakness had nearly compromised the bid. I answered plainly. Control failure around data handling and supervisor conflict disclosure. The work survived because I documented my drafts and escalation attempts. A weaker record would have left the company exposed. She held my gaze for a beat, then wrote something down. After the session, Soren called me into his office with Marin and Celia already there. I had learned enough by then to know this could mean reward, cleanup, or both. Soren got to the point. Ben had resigned before termination. Kira internship was ended for cause. The company would issue a formal notice confirming my authorship of the Cressida proposal, and my promotion review would be accelerated. They also wanted me to join a cross-functional task group updating controls on removable media, project attribution, and manager relationship disclosures. I almost laughed at the poetry of it. And the woman whose work had been stolen was now being asked to redesign the locks. Celia spoke next. You handled this with restraint and precision. Many people would have made it emotional. It was emotional, I said. I just translated it into evidence. That earned me the kind of smile women reserve for other women who know where the exits are. Weeks later, after Cressida signed on terms that protected margin and limited exposure, the office settled into its usual rhythms again. New gossip, new deadlines, same bad coffee. But something had changed in how people looked at me. Not with pity, with caution, with respect. Sometimes those wear the same shoes. Dina no longer shrugged. Omar asked smarter questions before approving vendor language. Liv started copying herself on more meeting notes. A few younger women in the department began stopping by my desk with nervous questions about credit clauses, promotion records, and how to document a manager who kept shifting promises. I answered everyone. Keep receipts. Follow policy, but do not worship it. If someone refuses to say it out loud, ask them to say it in writing, and never carry your whole future on one little silver drive. As for me, I bought an encrypted backup system, set up tighter version control, and moved into a role with more visibility and better pay. My mother celebrated by mailing me a ridiculously large wallet for all the money they nearly cost you. Sometimes I still think about that morning near the printer station, about Kira lying to my face, and Ben expecting me to absorb it quietly because that was simpler for him. They thought I would choose dignity in the way people often define it for women: hush, endure, recover privately. Instead, I chose a different kind. The kind with timestamps, the kind with policy citations, and the kind that walks into a boardroom wearing gold hoops and leaves with her name on the cover. That was all the revenge I needed, and it paid better than rage ever could.